Hey, what's happening, guys? Thanks for stopping back to the channel today, right here with the Rustbelt Mechanic. As you can see, we are all the way back up here at Wisconsin at Ryan's Diesel Service and Kodiak Truck. We're going to be talking with a couple of the guys here on the Duramax being broke. That's right. I know you guys haven't seen it in a whole lot of content lately, and that's because I broke the transmission after doing that 750 horsepower pull at the Van Wert County Fairgrounds. You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like the trans is slipping.
Does it really?
You hear that wah-wah?
Yeah.
It started acting up here and there. I thought I could fix it with a little bit of valve body tweaking, and that video just went to hell and back. So I figure I might as well take it to the experts. So me and none other than Josh here, Mr. Truckmaster, are going to be digging into this transmission, finding out a couple of the ins and outs on what exactly fails on the Allison transmissions, and give you guys some updates on what you might be looking at if you have these problems too.
No, well, hold up.
What?
You got to make fun of. I got to make fun of you. Right here. The man's truck had to haul.
The
Chevy, you know. The gas or Dodge.
The gas 6.4 Dodge did pull my truck all the way up here from Ohio. You know what? And I lost the bet too. So what am I doing? I'm wearing a Dodge hat. So as the master puts on his dirty mittens over here, so we wanted to leave all the naysay stuff out there and pulling in the transmission. You guys as technicians know how to do that crap. You know it takes a little while, and everybody does that one who's a grease monkey. So we are getting in on the actual teardown of the transmission now. We're going to be starting with this one. We've got it on the stand, connected to the PTO output housing right here, and we're going to start tearing it apart from the top up and see what Mark really finds. And as we kind of go along with it, we're going to see each one of these components. If we were to find a failed part, what would happen with the transmission.
This is why a transmission goes take 32 hours. I know where it's going.
All right, so first part that we're going to be pulling out our C1, C2 clutch drum. And this is where most of the bets are that we're going to have some failures. I, however, think it's down in the next one. But Mark thinks it's this one.
Well, which one of us is going to buy a lottery ticket tonight?
Well, I'll buy a lottery ticket. Well, I haven't done that in a long time.
I'm selling tickets for the giveaway truck.
I've been buying crypto instead of lottery tickets.
Yeah, but
it's the same difference.
Yeah, but crypto's not doing very well right now.
I know. It's just like buying a lottery ticket.
We good?
So what are these?
Junk.
Whoa.
There's your flare shift. This is black Collines and red Altos.
So we've got the black side of the steels here look
Correct.
pretty.
Which are the Collines?
Well, they look like they got hot, but this thing's never been hot.
No, that's not hot. That's normal wear because it's going to take the color of the surface off as you run it.
Okay, so for the non-trans people, this is C1, C2 clutch. So this is applied, what, second?
So C2 clutches would come on a 6-speed. That should be 5th and 6th gear.
5th and 6th gear, and we are having a flare shift on 5, and then we are seeing the clutch hub here on the outside is all beat up. It's like a file on these teeth right here. This should be perfectly smooth, and these are just absolutely destroyed. Is it because when it applies, it just rocks back and forth too much?
Correct. The pressure's so hard, and the steel is so hard. I shouldn't say the pressure. The steel is so hard that this whole thing is supposed to elevate up and down. Obviously, just thousandths to apply the clutch pack. Well, what happens is when it hits so hard, these are actually acting like a saw blade in here, and they're cutting. They're doing this action back and forth.
So when we go back together, what is the?
We're not going to run these.
We're not going to run these. We run a softer material, or
yes, Alto's done away with these. Now these are the black Collines are still available. Let's say you had a drag truck and it was it only drag raced or only truck pulled. You could run that a whole season and it wouldn't destroy the drum. But the thing with a drag truck would be different than a pull truck, because most pull trucks are either locked in third or fourth gear depending upon your gear ratios. So you wouldn't worry about that clutch pack, period.
Okay.
But with a drag truck application where it's shifting gears going down the track, then this clutch pack would come into play. But you would probably have to tear it down every year or every season and off season and inspect all this.
Gotcha.
And
So
probably
we're
replace the drum.
So we're going to be getting rid of that one, and then a lot of the times what you're saying is because this is so much like a file on application, it's not going to be able to squish because it's probably sticking itself as it's going on the application.
Yeah, the steels are all, so instead of a smooth apply up and down, you got a ratcheting effect because those things are grabbing at all different angles and catching all the different grooves that are wore in here. So with that happening, that clutch pack can't come up smooth. Well, the transmission's so sensitive, it's going to pick that up on the speed sensor. I don't think those clutches got hot because nothing smells stupid in here or anything else.
I drive this thing like a granny. Don't worry.
No, you don't.
Yeah, see, these clutches are all beautiful. So we're just going to put this back in.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Mint.
So we'll put this back together for Gramps, and then we'll recheck the clutch plates.
Pow!
Nice.
So on this one, when we're switching, which one is this? The C2 clutch?
Just C1.
The C1.
Yep.
And we're going to be putting a billet unit in here.
Nope, we're going to do the clutch hub, the C2.
The billet C2 clutch hub. So what is it that breaks off on this one? Why are we switching to billet?
It just shatters because it's not a strong piece.
It shatters the outside when it grips.
Yeah, it
just
can
has
blow
too much
the hub
pressure.
apart. That's why some guys will sleeve that. So you can see that trans did get hot at one time because that bearing's black. So actually, guess what? Yep. See, I can even take it apart with my hands. I shouldn't be able to do that.
Oh.
Well, I'm kind of like King Kong, but
Yeah.
It's very apish.
Or Hulk.
Whoever said transmission builders needed the best tools ever. How old is this wrench? I bet you it's older than me.
probably is. Probably from the 70s.
This Mac wrench is definitely older than me.
I have some Mac wrenches that were my grandfather's, and he was a mechanic for 49 years at a Chevy dealer, the same dealership for 49 years. In fact, when the guys that owned it passed away, they left him in his will. And the first time I ever seen my grandfather cry is that. It was pretty cool. And I got 2 of his wrenches that he had, that he worked with, and they just stay in my toolbox. I don't use them. I don't want to break them. If I break them, they'll never get warranty.
That's
It's just
awesome.
kind of a sentimental thing, you know?
So now we're into C3s.
Correct.
This is what I was calling is going to be ugly.
Yeah, we won't even bother checking the clutch clearance because the clutches are smoked.
All right. Carnage. I like it.
French fried, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that one.
You see all
Look at
the
this
spots.
next one.
Ooh. Well, before we dig into it, though, exactly what we're looking at is these are supposed to be clean metal, guys. And that's
Yeah.
like,
This is supposed to be an even orange color all the way across, and you see how it's all just
Yeah.
ripped and
See all your
shredded
hot
across.
spots on
oh,
here.
yeah.
All the heat.
So back in the dyno video, we
dyno
could
video,
see
yeah.
when it was shifting through, when they were in full throttle, you could hear it almost slightly flare up a little bit, and we'll play it right here. Yep, these are definitely
When was the
French
last time you
fried.
seen clutches this burnt?
Well, they're burnt, but you also look and see. Now you'll see some delamination here where the clutch material just came off. Period. You know, yeah, you got minimal heat here. Not as ugly as these, but then you look in between these and you see all the delamination. of the clutch material. So it's just the clutches aren't designed to handle the kind of power that it was making. We used all of these clutches back in the day quite a bit because obviously with anything transmission, there's always clutches and different parts evolving.
Now, in the way of these C3s, because these got so hot and destroyed, is it a lot because these clutches these aren't made to be able to hold that much pressure, temperature, etc.?
Right.
So
Right.
we need more upgraded clutches than what
Correct.
these are.
Yep, which we'll put in. So
I say you just run them and then just clean up the trans and should be good.
Just go send.
Yeah, just put some Gorilla Glue in there.
So we'll look down in the case too on these, but because those are choline steels also. When you see the black, they're the cholines.
What's the piston that applies the C3?
Yep, right down here in the C3 piston. And that's not a joke. So, okay, so we see what we got here. So this PPE kit, I'm thinking that's what we said this was, correct?
This is what I called
Yep.
was, yes.
Yep. So I'm not even going any further because we're going to show this because you guys may see it and may not. We have an applied piston failure. And I'm not going to touch that piston. You guys can go down because I already see the chunk of rubber laying in the corner. There's an applied piston failure. So we're going to, so now when we back the train up and we look at this, why did the clutches fail? The
Right
clutches
here?
failed because the piston didn't come up and apply the clutch pack firmly. The clutches slipped and it failed because of the piston. I would put money on that. So you see what's going on down in there. We'll pull that piston out now. And obviously the transmission is programmed to have fluid come in, apply that piston, apply that clutch pack. Well, as the fluid comes in, it's leaking past there. So it says more fluid, more fluid, more fluid. Next thing you know, you got such high pressure, and when it goes into gear, it usually will slam super hard or not go in at all. Again, back to the cold condition when it went in, thicker fluid. Knowing this was deck 6, thinner fluid when it's warm, we're not going to put deck 6 back in this. We're going to put both decks 3 in. And that's what we put in all our builds. So I'm going to go ahead and yank that piston out, and you're going to see the carnage. Here you go.
Look at that good stuff right there.
Fluid chunk right out of the piston.
So your C3, that's what's applied in third gear, and then also when you go into fifth gear, it applies as well as reverse. And when we had a flare shift between second and third and fourth and fifth, that's what this fluid was getting by that apply piston, and obviously being able to do it easier with the thicker fluid kind of masked it when it was cooler and worse when it got warmer. So
Yep.
it must have a lot more fluid that needs to apply in reverse, because we were having most issue in reverse.
Sure.
Well, the reverse would have been that and the C2 issue as well.
Correct. Yep. So, and this piston is not a factory piston. This
Really?
piston has been, if I should put it next to a factory piston, this has been, I'm going to say, narrowed up because they added extra clutches. I can tell by that clutch pack.
Okay.
They added an extra steel and clutch in there. So when you do that, you got to compensate, either machine the plate down, which they did, but this piston also is not the same dimension as an OE piston. So this is a one-off piston that you'd probably have to go back to Alto for. My guess is this is discontinued. Because they've improved along the way to different clutch setups and everything else. We're going to end up doing a LML piston build like we did on the Wife Max Trans. So you're going to basically have this carbon copy of that.
Gotcha.
So with the billet that's in there and everything else, that trans should be good for 1,200 horse. No
That's
questions asked.
awesome. This is pretty interesting stuff to see how that failed, definitely. Glad we found something. It always sucks to be able to take stuff apart and then not find what you were thinking. Right. I was right. That's right. We're moving to the back in the part pawl. We got the tail housing off. The nut that held our output on right there, it was awful loose. So that's not a good sign there for that one on any quality control of the transmission before. But I don't know. We got a couple more things to take apart right here. What is this housing here in the rear? This is
This is
our
just a roof line.
P3 planetary.
Yep.
They had the clutch.
P3 planetary and our C4.
C5s are back here and then C4s.
C5's and the C4. That's right, because it's from the back forward.
Yep.
Don't look too bad.
65s don't look too bad.
Those are a clutch pack that rarely wears because as soon as you click the transmission in gear, they're applied. So
anything other than reverse.
Go to my chart to see if that activates in reverse. I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
You know, let me check. Ooh.
Pretty loose.
Seemed loose.
So
Shouldn't
now
be
we're
more than-
checking our
Oh,
C4
boy. Yeah.
clearances. What should it be?
No more than 60. I normally run these C4s anywhere between 45 and 50 thousandths.
So we're at
there's
60 there?
right there.
So we're higher than 60,000s on our clearance
But
there.
on the early bills like this, they did give you a spec of 60. So we're going to see how much more is there. Yeah, we're at 68.
We're going to chalk up to 75.
Yeah, we're still minorly loose.
75 still fitting in there. How about that?
50
So
a little
we're
wide.
pretty high on the C4 clutch piston and the apply clutches. So when we're talking about clutch pack clearances, just a real quick little inlet on that one. That is the distance in which it takes the apply piston and the bulkhead kind of thing there to be able to squish the clutches together with the fluid pressure, and that would apply the inner gear that applies to the inside of that clutch housing. So the amount of fluid, the amount of pressure would press those clutches and steels together and apply the gear that those are kind of put to. Now, when we have too much clearance, that's going to cause for too much slippage or a delayed shift.
Well, that's about all she wrote.
So we know our problem was that C1, C2 clutch drum. We both called it.
How about
You
that?
called the C3s, I called the drum. It's almost Miller time.
Heck yeah, baby. All right, so now we're just going to flip it up. We're going to get the valve body off of this one, and then this is going to go over at hot tank, get all clean, pretty shiny like. So one of the things that we're doing before we kind of put everything together is we're wanting to put these C3 oilers, which is a different cover case that goes onto the side of the transmission here. So when it slings oil up over here, it's actually going to catch into like these little valleys that are in the sides.
There's a channel on the back side of the cover.
Okay.
So it'll redirect the fluid right down to that hole that we just drilled in there with our fixture.
Okay.
And it's going to flood the oil to the C3 clutch pack.
So it's going to be able to lubricate and get to our C3 clutch pack a whole lot easier through the holes that we just drilled there, as well as in the other side of the case, which is right down over there. That's pretty awesome. All right, so what is this magic machine we're looking at right now?
So this is a hot flush machine. Basically what this will do is it'll get up roughly, if I remember correct, like 160 or 180 degrees, and basically it'll bake the coolers all the way out. So basically it'll do two pushes in, and then it'll pull back to break any debris and anything that's internally inside these coolers. And these trans coolers, if you're paying a shop to go and put them in, plus, you know, the cost of them and everything, you're upwards of $1,000, $1,200, where we can put this on, even if we charged an hourly rate just for this machine to run, we're looking at what, a couple $100 for if it had to run a couple hours. So
Saving money, making it better, using old stuff.
oh yeah, a lot more cost effective that way. So
Plus, this thing's probably full of old crappy clutch material by what we found. Yeah.
definitely thinking so.
Junk City. Ready, set, go. Oh, that's not the go. This is go.
So there's times that we just run the converter flow valve in here. Looking at the valve that's in there, what they did is they just ground a flat on it. And I see that here now. So that will act the same way as the converter flow valve. So all they did is grind that flat, and it does the same thing that the converter flow valve does without having to spend the money on it. However, the interesting thing is normally you would shim this up with a spring and or a shim or both. And we don't see that here. So we will be addressing this and making things right in here.
Now, this converter flow valve, what is it? Is it just to increase flow to and through the converter, allow it to lock up better, or?
This was designed for drain back, so that when you fire it up, if it sits a week or something, you drop it in gear and the truck doesn't move and it doesn't want to go, this is to prevent that.
Gotcha. So we've got a pressure buildup in the torque converter, so we don't have to build up all of that and have cold hard starts.
Yep.
Nice. All right. So after running the hot flush machine through our coolers and lines and everything for about 20-30 minutes, this is all the stuff that came out of our cooler. And this is what we always recommend to customers. Hey, when you do your transmission, and even if you're getting a new one, there's a bunch of stuff in your cooler. So yeah, that's either going to need replaced, or if they don't have a fancy machine like this one, hot flush, that's pretty awesome. Well, boys and girls, it is done. Finally, I'm back in the truck. Oh, and it feels so good. All right, you guys really didn't want to see us throwing it all back in there and everything. It went back in really well. It looks absolutely fantastic. Here's the picture of it. And it's working absolutely awesome. Now, these transmissions are pretty simple once you actually get them back into place. What you have to do is actually go through a relearn procedure. Unfortunately, you do have to have a scan tool. You get it up to temperature, and then you go through a couple gears, make sure you're all the way up on fluid, and then you go into a manual relearn process through the scan tool. It'll make you shift through a couple of the gears, go up through them, and we're good to go. So everything is running absolutely wonderful and fine. And oh man, after 3.5 months, I am super glad to have my truck back. You have no clue how much of a pain in the butt it's been, how much trash I've got and junk in my garage that needs to go to the dump, and just all kinds of stuff I need to get done. So good news there. So what did we find? We found the C3 clutch piston, totally delaminated and blown apart. The C2 clutch drum, me and Mark both called it on those. That one was kind of all chewed up, banged up, looked like a freaking teeth file on that thing, so that was bad news. Some of the little gaskets and stuff didn't look good. The C3 clutches were totally ripped and done. So a couple of bad things that the trans was pretty much just done with, and now we've got a brand new fresh build. This one is probably going to be able to hold upwards of 1,200 horsepower before other things would kind of start to not hold, you know, so well. But that just means now we're going to have to go with some more horsepower eventually, right? Right. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And more power, baby. More power, baby. More power, baby.
All right. Well, I think that's about it for today, guys. If you have any questions at all, feel free to either leave a comment down below or get a hold of me. You can either email me at therustbeltmechanic@gmail.com, or you can just get a hold of me over on Instagram at therustbeltmechanic over there. Both of which I will have linked down in the description below. Make sure you also check out Josh over on Truckmaster. His channel is freaking awesome, and he does all kinds of crazy stuff like this all the time. Make sure you go and check him out and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any transmission transfer case needs, make sure you get a hold of Mark over at Kodiak Truck and Ryan at Ryan's Diesel Service. And for any of your transmission parts and needs, make sure you get a hold of Gear End. Again, all the links are going to be down in the description below. Thanks for tuning in today, guys, and as always, you guys stay awesome.